Good morning and welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with your host Denise Griffitts and Bengay III. Today, as we mark Ash Wednesday, let's take a moment to reflect on our personal and professional journeys. This season of renewal invites us to deepen our connections both spiritually and professionally. And as we continue our exploration of sales infiltration strategies, let's approach this week with a mindset of growth and transformation. Today, we are working in week 4, and we continue our in-depth exploration of the sales infiltration chapter from the Closers Part 2. And this multi-part series is designed to provide a masterclass in advanced sales strategies, and it's offering listeners actionable insights to elevate their sales approach and transform their careers. And we really need for you, if you're going to be following along with us, and we know you are, and we hope you will continue to do so. Before diving into week 4, take a moment to catch up on weeks 1, 2, and 3 of the Closers Inner Circle podcast. These foundational episodes provide essential context and insights into the very genuinely powerful strategies that we're discussing, ensuring that you get the most out of this series. And those links are in the podcast show notes. So I was going to say entrepreneur. I'm going to have Ben. I just had a brain freeze there. In order to maximize your learning experience and gain as much sales wisdom as possible, make sure that you have the Closers Part 1 and 2, and I'll have Ben tell you how to get those pretty quickly. Ben, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
Same to you. And I'm stunned at how many people um, have the cross on their forehead, more so this year than normal. Uh, I had Fox News on this morning, and fully half the people, moderators, guests, everybody had the cross with the ashes on their forehead. I was impressed by it, pleasantly surprised that there are that many people who knew or cared. It's unusual. Maybe we're having a little spiritual revival in the country.
As you know, I live right smack dab in the middle of Cajun country. Everybody here has their ashes except me, so I'm not going outside. I don't want them to point at me and make fun of me. But
Heathen, heathen.
yeah, pretty much. But it's a lovely ceremony, and I've been with people when they've had it done, and it's really lovely, and it is deeply spiritual.
Yeah, I went to a all boys Episcopal prep school up in the hills of Tennessee at St. Andrews, where the University of the South is in Swanee. It was the High Episcopal Church. So it was the Catholic Church in English, basically. And some of the most beautiful ceremonies I've seen were in that old stone chapel on the campus of St. Andrews. And I'll tell you a quick story. I had a monk there Father Bicknell, who was a great guy. We also had a monastery on the campus, and a great guy. And he had a wicked sense of humor, and he sort of knew what I was up to most of the time, which was I was not an A student, let's put it that way. So uh, one day, in a fit of whatever, we turned a trash can upside down, stuck a broom handle under it, tied it to the cord that ran the flag up the pole, and then you hoist the garbage can up and wiggle it around till it swings over the top of the pole. Then you drop the stick out from under it, and it's sitting on top of the pole upside down. Um, so it requires a extension ladder or garbage truck, I mean, a fire truck or something to get it down. So we did that, and I thought it was terribly amusing. And I'm up in the dorm one day, and people are going down to the chapel, and I said, "What's going on tonight? There tonight?" Not really being Episcopalian, I didn't know all the dates and days and so on. And they said, "Well, they're going down for confession." I said, "Really? Tell me how confession works." And they said, and they had put Father Bicknell in charge of the investigation to find out who put the garbage can upside down on top of the flagpole. So I said, "Well, how's confession work?" And they said, "Well, you can go in there and they technically don't know who you are, although they do, because there's only 142 of us in the school and they know the voices and so on. But technically, it's secret and sacred, and you can tell the priest anything and it'll never leave his mouth again or that booth. I said, that's fascinating. They said, yeah, Father Bicknell tonight is doing the taking confession. I said, Father Bicknell. So if I told him something in that booth, he could not tell anybody else. And they said, that's right. Keep in mind, he's in charge of the investigation to get me. So I'd go down, get in line, and people kept coming in. I kept backing up. I wanted to be the last person in the confession line. And finally, I got in, and he said, yes, my son. I said, Father, I have sinned. They taught me how to say all that. Father, I have sinned. And he said, what is it? I said, I'm the person who put the garbage can upside down on the flagpole. And from behind his side of the little black curtain came, we got him! We got him! I almost broke a leg trying to find the door to get back out of there. And then I heard his insane laughing. He, he says, you don't think I knew that? I said, well, I told you I confessed in the confessional. Now we're arguing through the black curtain.
Oh, geez.
I said, I told you in the confessional, so you can't talk about it anywhere else. He said, I already knew it. It doesn't count. So he never did anything about it. But the headmaster had said at a morning gathering, well, we said the Pledge of Allegiance and all, we're going to find out who put the can upside down and blah, blah, blah. And he said, we're going through the entire student body in alphabetical order. Father Bicknell walked up behind me where I was lined up and whispered in my ear, when I get to the G's, it's your ass. So he was the funniest, neatest guy. But that was my one and only experience in a confessional. The priest yelling, we got him! We got him!
No, I have never been in a confessional. I just wouldn't. It would catch fire. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would not take that chance. I'm not Catholic, I'm not Baptist, I'm not anything, but I still would not take that chance.
I was just trying to remove myself from the investigation.
Well, it kind of worked,
Sort of.
even though you were already busted. But it is Ash Wednesday. My neighbor, the neighbor's son is out there mowing, and I stuck my head because I need him to come mow mine pretty soon. And I stuck my head out and I looked at him, and he's sweating, so his cross is dripping down to his nose. It's like, okay, call me when you're ready. But anyway, well, listen, I have a question. Normally, it's you with the questions that get submitted about sales and sales infiltration, but I got one and it came through your partner in Success Radio. I don't know her. She contacted me through my podcast. Um, and this is interesting. I think you will really love this one. And her question is, how can sales professionals leverage podcasting as a
Hmm.
form of sale? I know, as a form, they're listening. We have people listening to us as a form of sales infiltration marketing to subtly influence their target audience and drive conversions and sales. And I thought that was an excellent question.
Yeah.
And I love it. So here's my response. Podcasting, as you know, I consider it to be marketing 101. Podcasting offers a unique opportunity for sales professionals to engage in infiltration marketing by subtly, and this is important, subtly, and you don't want to get in people's faces, integrating their brand and their expertise into episodes. A lot of people who have small businesses, they're not doing a personal podcast, they're doing a podcast that informs their people, informs people who may be their customers, who may want to become their customers. It's a way to get their voice heard. And by sharing valuable insights and building trust with listeners, they can create a really loyal audience that is going to be far more receptive to their sales messages over time. And Ben, this is where I mentioned this to you in the green room. This is where it's important to reference our mutual friend, Randy Chaffey, as
Mm.
really a shining example of mastering sales infiltration techniques through digital media and podcasting. Now, those of you who don't know who Randy is, we've mentioned him a couple of times, but he is a seasoned professional in the metal roofing industry, and he's got over 4 decades of experience. And he hosts the Building Wins Live podcast. And here's what I think is important. He created that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to stay connected, excuse me, with clients and share industry insights. And it has just grown and grown and grown. Now, that podcast covers topics like sales strategies, industry trends. I've been drinking hot tea and I think I had too much caffeine, so bear with me, and personal experience. And he uses it specifically to build relationships and provide valuable resources to professionals in his field, combining traditional sales techniques with modern digital communication methods. So that's why podcasting is marketing 101. It doesn't matter if you're a salesperson, you're on the road all the time. It doesn't matter if you're a dentist. If you've got an audience, if you've got customers, consumers, they want to hear from you. They don't want to just get, like my vet will send me once a month, I'll get something like, oh, we have these drugs for your cat. No, I don't want drugs for my cat. But other than that, I don't hear from them. But with Randy, you hear from him.
Yeah, Randy and his partner in podcasting, Wes Wyatt,
Wes, yeah.
are really geniuses at that. Randy comes to mind for two reasons. One is podcast that he does with Wes. They are doing a book in the Closers series, yet to be given a number, but it's underway, on trade shows and conventions and that type of thing, where you go to a place and booths are there, and the real benefit is networking. And so Randy he refers to himself as a road warrior, and being from the old school originally, where you were a road warrior or you weren't in business. We didn't have the internet. Long distance calls were very expensive. It was sometimes cheaper to drive to where you had to go and take your chances. And so he's a true seasoned road warrior, and it's not from 80 years ago. And his memories, he does it. He's probably on the road somewhere right now at a trade show or a convention or association type gathering. And he networks there, and then he takes his podcast and has made himself the expert. There's thousands of people in that industry. And starting with home improvement, roofing, siding, doors, windows, the people who manufacture it, the people who supply it, and so on. If you have elements of that type of thing on your house, and obviously you do, or you wouldn't have a house, odds are Randy and or one of his companies, he's like a food broker. He brokers these companies and sells them to lots of people. There's something on your house Randy indirectly or directly sold to somebody before it got put on your home or office. True road warrior has become, like you, Denise, probably not to your extent, but nevertheless, he's become an experienced podcaster, closely followed by lots of people. And he's gotten himself in that position. Any of our listeners, this is enviable. Make sure you're striving to do it. He's become, if I had anything in any of those industries I wanted done or was interested in doing, first I would call Randy Chaffey. For instance, I haven't told Gigi this yet because I suspect I'm going to get some resistance. We have a couple of houses that need re-roofing, and I'm thinking about doing metal roofing on it. Not like a barn, but they do metal roofing now where you can't tell the difference, or if you can, it's attractive and so on. Well, I wouldn't think of putting a metal roof on a house or much of anything else without running it by Randy Chaffey, saying, what do you think? What's the ups? What are the downs? When it rains, does it sound like you're inside a barrel? I read in one of his podcasts, or heard in one of his podcasts the other day, it doesn't properly insulated. It's no different from any other roof, and so on. But through podcasting and networking and trade shows, he's become the go-to person. I know there are others probably as talented as he is and so on, but that doesn't make any difference. He's the one holding himself out front. And through the friendship with Randy, I've gotten on the lists of roofing people and so on, things I'm really not terribly interested in unless I've got a project I'm working with in that area. Uh, but I've gotten on those lists, and Randy is mentioned frequently in other companies' newsletters and so on. Our associate, Randy Chaffey, like that, but there's a brand of approval, like the good housekeeping seal of approval. If they can drop Randy's name in, they do, because where he was trying to hook up with them originally, they're trying to hook up with him now. And that's good writing, good podcasting, and being a pro in his industry. And he works himself. I get tired reading about where he's going. I used to do 300 seminars a year, did as many as 33 once in 11 days. And gave a one, I know what it's like to be punch drunk out on the road, gave a wonderful description. I may not have the cities right, but about how wonderful it was to be in Orlando. This was on the 3 a day trip. And I gave a wonderful thing about how much I loved Orlando and why to be there, and just couldn't say enough good things about Orlando. When I finished, guy said, raised his hand and said, Mr. Gay, we're thrilled to know how much you love Orlando, but since you're in Baltimore, what do you feel about?
I figured you'd landed in Idaho and didn't notice. Yes.
But so he leads that type of life. I mean, every time I get something from him, there he is on an airplane heading somewhere, checking his bags, going somewhere. You literally get tired watching him. So when you listen to Randy, take notes. He knows what he's talking about. He is a bona fide, certified um, road warrior and a master closer, one of the early
Yeah.
members of the National Association of Professional Salespeople, and just couldn't be a nicer guy. But second to you, I would go to him for podcast experience and questions and so on. He's really something.
And I I can't say this with any certainty at all because COVID was 3 or 4 years ago and I've tried to put all that behind me.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like Randy got in touch with me either on Facebook or LinkedIn somewhere, and I gave him some information on how to do what he could do, and then he just ran with it. I think I did because I train a lot of people. I mentor a lot of people, but I'm pretty sure that Randy kind of picked my brain
Uh,
and I
prob-
allowed it.
yeah,
So,
probably so. And he connected because of you and me. Uh,
mhm,
we have several friends. You have several friends. I know where they came from, and
right.
most of them are good supporters. Once you make a friend like that, they support you and promote you and share your stuff, and it's invaluable. Not only are they good people, with malice and forethought, I go looking for people like that because once they get in your inner circle, they do you a lot of good, and vice versa. So that is, while you're looking for subtleties in selling, sales infiltration, that's another one. Get inside, get with them, get known by those people. I'm now known by people in the uh, materials industry, roofing side of windows and doors and so on, that I used to know a lot of them because I had several large clients who did home improvement, at the curb, they did home improvement. And but Randy is where they got that stuff. So I'm now having a renaissance of people at a different level or different strata in that business. But I repeat, Randy's a great guy, teach you a lot about selling. You people ought to get hooked up with him, linked up with him, tell him that Ben and Denise sent you, and it adds to your bag of tricks. Uh, Speaking of that and selling, Hugh Harris, who who now owns a chain of very successful restaurants, in Georgia and expanding into Florida. I first met him when he was running the largest home improvement company in the country and taught his people for years. He, by the way, another reason to write a book, picked up his first copy of The Closers at a garage sale for 50 cents, read it, called me, and we have since done millions of dollars in business together. So if you get an opportunity to get your name on a book that you've written that's well done and pertinent to what you do, there's another advantage. And somehow that's how I met Randy. I don't recall, but it had something to do with he'd heard of me in the home improvement business. So another reason to learn from Denise, to learn from me, and broaden your circle. The world is full of Randy Chavitzes, and they would.
Right.
The old saying is the teacher will, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, that doesn't mean it's some mystical experience, God on his hands and knees on the cloud looking down, seeing if you're ready. The secret meaning behind that phrase is the teachers have always been all around you. When you're ready, you, the student, are ready to receive, you'll suddenly start hearing the messages that were around you all the time anyway. So when the student
And
is,
with books, same thing. I mean, I can
yep,
pick up, I've got a shelf that's full of books that I read pretty much a lot, Napoleon Hill, anything by, the Covey people, Franklin Covey.
mhm,
But when I need something, I know, and I've said this before on my various podcasts, I can grab a book and not really know at the front of my mind what it is I'm looking for, but I can open it. I'll just kind of fan it open and it lands exactly where I needed it to land.
precisely happens to me on a regular
Yeah,
basis.
all the time.
And but it was there. Earl Nightingale used to say the sort of the opposite of that. He said, if you have a secret and you don't want anybody to know about it, write a book, put the secret in the book, and distribute a free copy to every library on earth, and your secret will be safe. So that's not, it's like the time I complimented Dr. Hill. He was at our house, and I said, he was looking at a copy of Think and Grow Rich that my first wife, the departed Marcia, had left out on the table to impress him, I guess. And I said, Dr. Hill, trying to get through that awkward moment, I said, Dr. Hill, how does it feel to have written one of the best-selling books on earth? They used to say it was second only to the Bible. I don't know if that was true then or if it's true now, but it was a big seller, millions of copies sold. And he, being the humble man he was, he said, best-selling, least read. So if you've got 10 books within 50 feet of you, you've got a whole lot of answers to your life. Some books better than others, some better written than others, and so on. But you've got whole bunches of answers right there. But you got to pick up the book and read it and do something. The other secret in that he used to laugh about in Think and Grow Rich was people are always looking. He says, Ben, people are looking for the deep philosophical meaning. I didn't have a deep philosophical meaning. I was writing a sales training book, and the people turned it into something much more than I had ever imagined. And then they go looking for the secret. And he said, I forget the number, 19, 18, whatever. He said, I mentioned the secret 19 times in the book. It's action. Take action. So one, you got to open the book. Most people don't. Two, you got to read it, scan it. Not all books are worth reading, but they're all worth starting because somebody had something bottled up in them they had to share with the world. And it was probably had the germ of a very good idea in it. And then once you get that good idea out of it, take action. Because if you don't, uh, it's like it didn't happen. And the Randys of the world and the Denises of the world, you, and some other people I know are masters at doing that and have built big, successful businesses just because they read, were open to receive new ideas, and took action. And the reading, of course, can be conversational also with people that you meet. It's one of the reasons I go out of my way to meet interesting people. Oh, speaking of that, uh, Nancy Foster sent in a great three-part question, but she also sent in a completely separate question. She said, I saw a list of famous, infamous, interesting people that you've met over the years and so on. So I guess it's part of a package I send out to people who have me on their podcast or thinking about hiring me to do a speech or something. But for some reason, she knew of that list. I didn't know it was out in the general public. But she said, sometimes, she said, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact thing in front of me, but the gist of it was devote some shows to what you learned from these interesting folks. And I'll read off just a few. It looks like there's probably 30 or 40 on this list, but Napoleon Hill, of course, William Penpatrick, the owner, chairman of the board of Holiday Magic Cosmetics, ran for governor against Ronald Reagan back in the 60s. Earl Nightingale, dear friend of mine, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Og Mandino. If we ever talk about him, he literally saved my life, literally, with a story he told. And Bill Gove and Charlie Manson at San Quentin, interesting character. Cal Worthington, the old guy who hawked cars on television and created a whole industry. And it goes on, but there are the Apollo 15, 16, 17 astronauts and a lot of
Yeah.
others, but I officially
But
worked
you
for those
can't
three.
forget Zig Ziglar, though.
Zig, I assume is on this list somewhere. If not, oddly enough, he's not. I can't imagine why. And I'm going to write it down. Yeah, Zig and I started in the same business on the same day in the same meeting. And because he was 18 years older than I was, he was in the Navy the day I was born. Uh, so there was a spread, but neither one of us had made big money yet. He hadn't hit on the right thing, and I was too young. But Zig, I've just handwritten it in. Next time this is revised, that will be there. I probably left him off because it was too obvious. But Werner Earhart uh, had asked in the forum, Bob Proctor, a lot of these guys worked with me or for me and then went off to do their own things. But yeah, Zig would certainly be on there, and I've got some funny Zig stories. What I can bring to the table is the behind the scenes stuff. It's like with Dr. Hill. Everybody, Bob Proctor built a career talking about Think and Grow Rich and Dr. Napoleon Hill. He never met him, although they both worked for me at the same time. I didn't know of Proctor's fascination with Hill and never crossed my mind to go out of my way to get him in the same place at the same time. But a lot of cross-referencing here of this person led to that person who led to this person who taught me this or taught me that. And back to when the student is ready, every single person on this list or all the people on this list, one thing they have in common is when I met them, I was ready. I was ready to learn what they had. I was open to it. And except for a few here and there, I didn't meet them by accident. I went out of my way to meet them and to get in their path and then listen and take notes. Much of this, I put up something on Facebook almost every day, and most of it comes from written notes I made over the years and threw in various boxes and so on. But they come from the interesting people I've met. So I encourage you to do that. Nancy, so if Nancy and anybody else listening, if you want to send us a question to be read and responded to on a show, think about some of those people. Charlie Manson would be one. He always, of the whole list, Denise, there are two lines that pop out that once somebody reads the list, invariably they'll look up and go, tell me about Charlie Manson. And they'll say, tell me about the astronauts working there at NASA on a volunteer basis, but nevertheless. And there also on this could be People Builders, the company that I formed to teach seminars at San Quentin State Prison, which was an interesting experience to say the least. And I spent 12 hours, I was in and out for other reasons also, but I spent 12 hours once a week, 6 o'clock Friday night to 6 o'clock Saturday morning for 5 years, every week, never missed a time. If I was off doing something else, I flew home to be there at San Quentin. So lots of fascinating people. And then people love stories. You've been kind enough to mention, Denise, that I'm a reasonably good storyteller. It's because I met interesting people. Not today, but sometime I'll tell you how Og Mandino, he's right on the list, literally saved my life. I am here talking to you today because of a story Og Mandino told me. Well, I didn't meet Og by accident. He spoke at a seminar that we were doing. I liked what he had to say. I took him to dinner and we became buddies. And I learned so much from him because I sought him out. We didn't have dinner by accident. I didn't hire him by accident. I didn't ask him questions and listen to his stories by accident. It was all part of an evil plot to learn from one of the masters I've been lucky enough to meet. So anyway, that's why Nancy Foster said, will you ever talk about those people? Yeah, in response to specific questions. So make them up and send them in to me. Either email them to Denise or to me. Either way, they'll wind up here on the show. Then Nancy Foster said, how do you handle politics in sales? I know we try and have evergreen shows, but currently there's a little excitement in the political world in the United States.
Yeah, a
And
bit.
yeah, and you're either on one, it seems, I don't care what side people are on. I have a theory, what you do in the privacy of your own home, so long as it doesn't hurt the women and children or scare the horses, I don't care. It's none of my business. I have
Uh,
friends who are left-wing loons. I have people who are right-wing fanatics. I married a left-wing loon, Gigi, and slowly but surely, she says to people, I met Ben and he brought me to the dark side. So it doesn't make any difference to me what you are. We can have a friendly debate or no debate. But she said,
Right.
Nancy Foster said, how do you handle politics and sales? Very carefully. And here's the reason. Currently in the United States, roughly half the people, except on specific issues, half the people are on one side, half the people are on the other. The last presidential election was decided by about 2%. That's several millions of people, but 2%. So if you say something outlandish about politics, which is anything on either extreme, you're going to offend 48 to 50% of your audience. So, Nancy, handle politics carefully. Now, I will admit that on the Facebook and so on, my most political, controversial thing is I will put up a heart, two or three American flags, a heart, two or three American flags, and a heart. That's my whole comment. I love America. I've had disagreements with America. I've had good times with America, bad times with America, but basically, I love America. So that's about as political as I get uh, out front and in public. Now, if I'm talking to someone in the privacy of their office or the privacy of a private phone call, and they say first their political views, I know whether to be quiet, not say anything, or that's interesting. my what an interesting baby, as you say, when you're looking at an ugly child. Uh, I don't get lured into conversations where I think we're on totally different sides. I want to have an intelligent discussion uh, and feel out how we each feel. I'm open for that, but I won't get sucked into declaring I'm right wing or left wing and then try and sell them uh, an item. because if you're on the wrong side of their mindset, you just cost yourself a sale. So, to Nancy, how do you handle politics and sales? Very, very carefully. Now, if I'm with somebody and they say or do something that tells me that they are sort of where I am, which is not really all that radical. Uh, I'm not a socialist, and I'm not a Nazi or anything in between. I'm just a common sense human being, I think, in my view of common sense. But if, let's say, I'm in the privacy or on the back deck of our house with somebody who then says something exactly like what I believe, I might encourage that conversation, especially if we're not doing business together. If we're doing business, different story. Then she said, part B, how do you handle religion in business and when you're selling and so on? Exactly the same way. With religion, though, you got a little more freedom in that it's usually not something that you argue about. You may be different. My mother was a Roman Catholic when she met my father, a Southern Baptist. So I was raised in a compromised church, the Congregational Church. And I used to get the biggest kick out of it because I knew I was sitting between a Catholic and a Baptist. And the minister, Reverend Anderson, was up talking about whatever. And my mother was hearing that with Catholic ears. And my father was hearing it with Baptist ears and wondering why the music wasn't any good or was dull or put you to sleep or something. But they worked out their compromise was everybody got to believe what they wanted to believe. And if they wanted to go to church, they had a sort of a joint meeting ground. I was never in a Baptist church with my father. I was never in a Catholic church with my mother. Even the prep school I went to was sort of a compromise. It was the Episcopal church. And my father thought that, well, at least it's not Catholic. And my mother was thinking, well, at least it's not Baptist. So I went to the Episcopal church. But I learned to not, I'm not so uh, vehement about any position other than I'm a struggling Christian. Struggling, I mean, I believe in the concept. I have a tough time living up to it from time to time. So I will say in a business thing, if it comes up, uh, that I'm a struggling Christian. And most people just take it at that. They understand the concept. And one of the few times religion ever pops into a sales thing is if I'm in their home or office and I'm looking around and I see what I lovingly call the Mormon picture. That's a family of 15 or 20. All the men have on white shirts and black ties. And and I call that the Mormon picture. I've said to people, are you Mormon? They go, no, why do you ask? I said, because that's the Mormon picture. They said, no, that was a family reunion 6 years ago in Myrtle Beach or whatever. Didn't mean anything to them religiously. But beyond that, and then you can back out of that easily and just tell them, here's why I guessed that. But for God's sake, do not get into your political views on fill in the blank, or don't get into deep philosophical questions about a religion, especially when you really don't probably know a whole lot about religions other than your own. So you might spout off with something and make it look like A, you're ignorant, and two, you're biased. Uh, we currently have an anti-Semitic wave going through
I
the
know. I
country.
do not understand that.
I don't get
I
it.
don't understand it at all.
Yeah, I don't get it either. But there is that bias and deep-seated thing among some people. But if you see them, I'm a news junkie. If you see them interviewed, the people at the rallies, by anyone who's a good interviewer, you quickly discover most of them don't know why they're there. The guys went to pick up girls, and the girls are at that young stage where they're easily influenced because they're more sensitive. Gigi was probably still is, but was going to anti-Vietnam rallies when she was a young lady and crying and sobbing and carrying on. And now she looks back and she says, well, I was young and naive. You can be for or against the war, but she said, I got carried away, to say the least. She had a friend who was married to a guy who worked for various defense contractors. And one day they had a gathering at the lady's house with like-minded young ladies who were all anti-violence, anti the war, anti this and that. And she had her husband come out with a can, I guess, of BBs and slowly poured into another can of BBs, which made an interesting sound. And it was the lives lost in whatever. And I asked him about it one time. I said, "You knew Gigi back in the day when she and her friends were a little bit, in my opinion, out there." He said, "Out there, my God." He said, "But I was trying to have a nice life at home, so I did it." He said, "Do you know what I designed and did when I wasn't pouring BBs into a can?" I said, "No." He said, "I worked for," and he named one of the defense contractors, "making bombs and rockets and designing better ways to kill people." So he said, me pouring BBs into the can while they're all sobbing and crying is funny looking back. But he said, I wanted to have, happy wife, happy life. He said, I wanted to have a happy life. And so I poured the BBs and shut up. And then got up in the morning and went and made some more bombs for whomever. And then Nancy Foster asked about sex. How do you handle sex in politics? I mean, in a sales situation. The answer is I don't.
You
And
don't
yeah,
ever.
yeah, just don't.
No.
Yeah, you just change the subject, look away, do whatever. There is no way to win. If you're being sexually harassed, summon the courage to say, "Excuse me, you don't treat me that way." But that won't ever happen. I've been at this a long time, and just bad manners brought it up a few times, and by and large is sidestep it. But you do not get into sexual discussions with anybody but somebody you intend to have sex with, perhaps, but with customers, clients, uh, people you do consultants, people above you, beneath you, and so on. You just don't.
I
Uh,
always think of it as the Thanksgiving table. Would you
yeah,
say that in front of
yeah,
your grandma?
yeah,
No.
yeah,
If there's things that you absolutely would not want to start a fight with at Thanksgiving, because that's where it seems to all happen,
yeah.
don't do it. Don't bring it up. Don't talk about it. Leave the room.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you can leave the room, get out of the line of fire. But I've
Yep.
heard all my life you don't
I just
discuss
leave.
politics.
I get
Yeah.
out. I just leave. I don't even say goodbye.
Well, that would get you out of the sex conversation
Oh,
right
yeah.
there.
You know,
Anyway,
with my voice, that happens all the time, though. I will get people say, "Oh, you've got the sexiest voice." No, I'm soothing, darn it. I'm not. Let's get this straight.
but you
And
do.
I don't. I think I told you this a long time ago. It has nothing to do with podcasting or sales infiltration, but maybe it does. But years ago, I woke up, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I think my phone was ringing and it scared me because we had had a series of deaths in my family.
Hmm.
My youngest brother, 13, had been killed. My stepfather died. There was a lot going on. There was a couple of other pretty remarkable deaths. And it was just, if the phone rang, you just went and quit breathing for a while.
Hmm.
And I picked up the phone and I said hello. And this guy, he didn't know who I was. My phone has always been, my phone doesn't exist anywhere. You can't find it. It's always been unlisted. And proceeds to tell me what he was going to do to me. And I'm a nice Southern polite girl. And I listened to him. I didn't interrupt him. And finally, I think he either ran out of steam or got where he thought he was going to go. So I, in my sweet Southern voice, very quietly told him what I was going to do to him. And I'm going to tell you, Ben, men don't listen. They do not listen. Because I mean, until I got to the part about chainsaws and we have these big saws here. They're called a paspatu. It takes two men, that two-man saw. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned blood, gore, guts. And finally something clicked and he said, "Ooh," and he hung up on me.
Good.
And he didn't call me back. I was hurt. I was waiting for roses or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm telling you, I mean, I talked to him for a while and he didn't hear a word I had to say. Men listen to tone. They don't listen to words. I'm telling you right
true.
now.
There is truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll test it every once in a while just for fun. I was like, you want what? Okay, let's have a chat. So, but yeah, it's interesting. Um,
Most of those questions, by the way, can be answered common sense, but you
right.
mentioned the Thanksgiving table. That's a great way to draw a quick word picture. If you wouldn't discuss it at Thanksgiving dinner, assuming you're in a reasonably normal family, don't discuss it with a customer. Don't cuss in front of customers. I was a young boy. I was in the Coast Guard. I worked in and around prisons for 11 and a half years. Trust me, there isn't a word a person could come up with that I haven't heard. And they can't come up with many words under certain circumstances I haven't used. But I don't use damn or hell in front of customers or with people that I do business. It's just not worth it. I have a large vocabulary. I can use other words. So it's not, it doesn't add anything. It's like when I respond to a Facebook or post to Facebook and so on, the last thing I always think right before I hit send is, will this help sell something that I'm involved in? Either my consulting or coaching or mentoring or books or a speech or something. And if the answer is no, it won't help any of those, then I hit delete instead of send. If it doesn't move the ball forward down the field with minimal chance of offending someone, uh, don't do it. Now, I have friends that I would laugh hearing the things we're talking about, because I can be very loosey goosey with them, because one, we're just having fun. Two, there are no airs between us. And then I don't do business with locals or friends. I have a lot of people who become friends where we started out as customers. But if you're a friend or a relative, I just don't do business with you to start with, because I know it'll come back. So if you don't do well in the business, I will hear about it at Thanksgiving. And I don't want to do that. So
No,
somebody says, how do I join? Fill in the blank, Holiday Magic. How can I become a distributor for your books and so on? And if dodging the question doesn't work, I say you can't. Why? Your friendship is more important to me than business. So the answer is no. And then if they know me, they know that is the answer. Once I
no. Yeah,
no, yeah,
yeah. I
no to
do the
me.
same. I will tell people, I'll tell you no once. I'll even say no the second time. It's a courtesy. There is no third time. And they, oh,
I've deemed
okay.
you as stupid by that point. Yeah, no,
It's
I
like,
think I've
ain't
told you
happening.
this at one of the prisons I've worked in, maybe San Quentin, I don't know. Behind the desk of a counselor, a big sign up on the wall. So when you sat across from her desk, you saw her face and that sign. And the sign said, which part of no don't you understand? Because everybody was in there asking for something they weren't going to get. You're an inmate. We already told you the do's, don'ts, and what you're going to get and what you're not going to get. We don't need to have a conversation beyond that. Not go, oh, we didn't think of that. Sure, you can do that. Uh, so which part? I always thought that was funny. Which part of no don't you understand? And that's a good boundary to put up with friends, neighbors, relatives, and with some clients, uh, depending on the relationship and what the subject matter is at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. My mother always insisted that my first word was not mom, dad, dog, cat. It was no. And she said, I said it just like that, no. And I meant it. So I haven't grown out of it, but I kind of like that word. It's my favorite word.
Yeah, that's good. More normally, you have to train someone to do that after they get to adulthood. Starting out with it is a real advantage.
Nothing
In the
wrong with saying
closers,
no's.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say there's nothing wrong with saying no. If you have a valid, solid reason for saying no, and it could be any number of things or 10 things all in a row. It doesn't matter. No is no. Don't
Yep.
circle back around to me because you will get, I'll make your ears bleed at some point.
Yeah,
Or
and
call me in the middle of the night. I will definitely make your ears bleed.
I don't throw it around casually because it's not, everything isn't a no. You know, a lot of things. Oh, that's interesting. Let's talk about whatever. But if it's I'm known among our friends as if you hear no out of his mouth, just change the subject. It's over. I've told somebody this in the last few days. Forgive me if it was you, but we were at some friend's house and Gigi's the the son-in-law of one of Gigi's best friends, childhood type friend, asked me, we were over there near Christmas time, and he said, knowing I love their two little boys, their grandsons of Gigi's friend, he said, I was wondering, and I don't know him that well, but which is probably the reason he asked me. He said, I was wondering if you would mind coming over here Christmas Eve, putting on a Santa Claus suit and
No.
and jiggle some packages on the front porch and let them see you doing it and so on. I said, no, no, thank you. And he said, well, and he started into, well, the friend of Gigi has known me for 40 years. And she said, he said, no, that's not going to change. And so the guy was bright enough to change the subject. But on Christmas Eve, do I want to drive 5 miles out in the country, put on a Santa Claus suit on the chance that two little kids are going to look through a window at me? No, thank you. And there's nothing wrong with it. Find somebody who's
No.
willing to do it.
Right.
Me, Ben Gay, no.
Nope.
End of story.
See, there we sound like twins. No. Oh, and if I really want to, elaborate a bit, I'll say, that ain't happening, hon. And when I go dead southern on you, leave. Go, go, go now. So
And in selling, what we're supposed to be talking about, we
we
are,
kind of are, yeah.
if you listen through it, we are. In selling, in sales infiltration, we talk about it. Set the table. You establish the rules of the game up front. I don't ever have, well, never's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but I hardly ever have an objection sprung on me by surprise because I already covered all those up front. I already told them when I get to the end of this, I'm going to ask for your order and you're going to say yes or no. Don't tell me you want to think about it. Don't tell me you got to check with your brother-in-law in Cleveland who's an attorney. You don't have a brother-in-law. If you did, he wouldn't live in Cleveland and he's not an attorney. Just say yes or no. Now, there's some good things and bad things about our product. Let me cover the bad things first. That's directly from the book I wrote for J. Douglas Edwards after he died called Sales Closing Power, but I learned it from him. He said, if you have a built-in objection, bring it up first and brag about it. Get it out of the way, get it off the table. Tell them what they're probably going to say at various points, because everybody does. That takes the power out of their hands and a more positive way to look at it opens it up to an honest relationship. You've got concerns about the product or you're not interested, tell me. That's not a problem. But let's not waste each other's time shucking and jiving and delaying and so on. The and there are times when they have to think it over because they have to check with their spouse, and that's because you went into a one-legged sale when you shouldn't have. That's a hard thing to get over, but I'm used to it. If it requires two people to make a decision or five people, they all must be in the room before I utter the first word of the sales presentation. Company need the board of directors, super, round them up. Husband, wife, each one needs the other, super, get her or get him. I do this with salespeople who are calling on us or for some reason they've gotten on the phone. I said, well, Gigi, you talk to them. And she says, yeah, but I'm not going to make a decision without you. And I said, exactly. That's the reason you're going to talk to them. And you use that the same way I use it if you're not there. Great presentation. I'm really interested, but I got to talk to Gigi. They shouldn't be there giving the sales presentation without Gigi. They should have found out who has to be in on the decision and make sure they're all there. And they say, well, it was hard to get them, the couple or this or that together. Fine, I don't doubt that. When you do, though, that's when you give your sales presentation. It's pointless to, that's like giving amateur salespeople go into a company and give their sales presentation to the receptionist first. They don't know what they're selling. What they're selling at that point is getting inside the business and inside the office of the people you're looking for. Every single human being in a company has the right to say and will to say no. The janitor they hired last Monday can tell you no and send you packing. But buried in there somewhere is probably the one person who can say yes. Until you're talking to that one person, don't give your sales presentation. I know it's tempting. She seems so nice. And so you give the presentation to the lovely receptionist or whatever, and she says no. Hugh Harris, the guy I was talking about earlier, Home Improvement, decided one time that he was going to change the people that, and talking about him reminded me of a quick thing I'll tell you in just a second. Anyway, he decided to change the people from the first largest roof tile shingle manufacturer to the second biggest, equally good, but second biggest, after years of being with the first one. And they had some sort of issue. I don't know what it was, but it caused him to want to change. So he called the second biggest supplier, and said, "Hi, this is Hugh Harris. You may not have heard of me. I'm with Dixie Home Crafters." And the guy said, "If you can't be in this business and not know about you, Mr. Harris." He said, "Well, I need to talk to you about your products." And he said, "I've been trying to talk to you about my product for several years." And he said, "Well, I've never heard from you." He said, "Because I couldn't get past your doorkeeper, who's always telling me you have a supplier, and so there's no need to go any further." And Hugh said to him, "I need to get you with Ben Gay, because a good salesperson would have gotten past that. But you just ran into the truism. One person here can say, yes, it's me. Everybody else in the company can say no. And you met my receptionist slash secretary slash doorkeeper, and you let her know stick. Shame on you."
Ah,
And then they swapped, and until the day he sold the company, I believe he was with the new people. But he reaches out to him, says, "I want to buy from you." And the guy says, "I've been trying to sell to you, but I'm too weak to get past the receptionist."
that's a great point. Oh, I just looked at the clock. We're gonna run out of time like
All right.
now. So very quickly, and let's pick up on that story in another vein the next week. Tell our audience where they can buy the closers books and with free shipping.
The way you can get the Closers series, all of it, part of it, one of it, is to go to stores, STORES dot eBay dot com, COM, / and this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS, stores.ebay.com / Ronzoni Books. And even though it's from them, they will bring it to me. So they'll still be signed and dated. And if you order before 2:30, they'll go out that day, Pacific time. And they come with our unconditional lifetime, no questions asked, money back guarantee. Wholeheartedly recommend it. The Closers series. The Closers Part 1 is the most famous, but they're all good or they wouldn't be in the series. Closers Part 2 is my personal favorite. But any one of them. Closers Part 1 sold 10.5 million copies when we quit counting 30 years ago. And you can't go in a sales office, a real sales office, and say, "Anybody in here have the Closers?" That somebody either all of them or one person, probably the top salesperson, won't hold up a copy of the famous Blue Book. It's everywhere.
I'm going to be part of that family pretty soon with Closers Part 4.
Yep.
I'm so
Yep.
excited. I'm getting so close to handing it off to you and going, do what you will with it. I'm done. So we shall see. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for being with us here today and every week. We really appreciate and look forward to reading and answering your questions about sales and the work we do. And we will see you next week. Ben, have a safe Ash Wednesday.
Same to you.
Thank you.